Suzanne Morrison thought she was just cleaning out her son's closet after his death. But when she found a hidden camera with a 47-minute video message Matthew had recorded for her, what he said in those final words would transform her understanding of motherhood, addiction, and unconditional love. 6 months after Matthew Perry's death in October 2023, his mother, Suzanne Morrison, finally found the strength to begin the heartbreaking task of going through his personal belongings. The process had been delayed not just by grief, but by the overwhelming nature of sorting through a lifetime of memories, achievements, and the accumulated possessions of someone who had lived such a public yet deeply private life. Suzanne had been putting off this particular responsibility, knowing that touching Matthew's things would make his absence feel more real and permanent. But his Beverly Hills home couldn't remain a shrine forever, and there were decisions to be made about what to keep, what to donate, and what to preserve for posterity. On a gray April morning in 2024, Suzanne entered Matthew's bedroom with her sister and a close family friend, armed with boxes, tissue paper, and the kind of emotional fortitude that only a grieving mother can summon. The room still smelled faintly of his cologne, and his reading glasses sat on the nightstand exactly where he had left them, as if he might return at any moment to finish the book that lay open beside them. They worked methodically through his dresser drawers, closets, and personal items, making piles for different charities and family members who might want mementos. Suzanne found herself pausing frequently, overwhelmed by the flood of memories that each item triggered. His favorite sweater from friends, handwritten notes from fans, photos with his co-stars, prescription bottles that served as painful reminders of his long struggle with addiction. It was while going through a storage closet that had been converted into a makeshift office space that Suzanne made the discovery that would change everything. Behind a stack of old photo albums and memorabilia boxes, wedged against the back wall in a way that suggested it had been deliberately hidden, was a small digital video camera that she had never seen before. The camera was still charged, and when Suzanne turned it on, she found a single video file dated September 15, 2019, more than 4 years before Matthew's death. The file was labeled simply "For Mom" in Matthew's handwriting on a piece of tape stuck to the camera's side. Suzanne stared at the camera for a long moment, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She knew instinctively that whatever was on this recording was going to be significant, possibly life-changing. Part of her wanted to watch it immediately. Another part was terrified of what her son might have felt compelled to record during what she knew had been one of the darkest periods of his addiction. After asking her sister and friend to give her some privacy, Suzanne sat on Matthew's bed, took a deep breath, and pressed play. Matthew's face filled the small screen, and Suzanne immediately noticed how thin he looked, how hollow his eyes appeared. This was from 2019, during a period when his opioid addiction had reached its most dangerous point, when he had been hospitalized multiple times and had come closer to death than ever before. "Mom," Matthew began, his voice soft but clear. "If you're watching this, it probably means I'm gone, and I'm so sorry you had to find this. I know how hard this must be for you. I recorded this because there are things I need to tell you, things I could never say when I was alive, and I couldn't bear the thought of dying without you knowing them." Suzanne's hands began to shake as she held the camera. This was indeed a goodbye message, recorded during a time when Matthew had clearly believed he wouldn't survive his addiction. But instead of the desperate, rambling farewell she might have expected from someone in such a dark place, Matthew's words were thoughtful, measured, and filled with a clarity that surprised her. "First," Matthew continued, "I need you to know that nothing that happened to me was your fault. I know you've spent years wondering what you could have done differently, what signs you missed, what conversations you should have had. I need you to stop doing that to yourself because you were the best mother I could have asked for, and my addiction was never about anything you did or didn't do." These words hit Suzanne like a physical blow. She had indeed spent years torturing herself with exactly those questions, replaying every interaction with Matthew, wondering if she had been too enabling or not supportive enough, if she had ignored warning signs or pushed too hard for him to get help. Matthew seemed to anticipate her emotional state because he paused in his recording, looked directly into the camera, and said, "Mom, I can see you crying right now, and I need you to listen to me very carefully. You gave me everything a child could need. Love, support, encouragement, and the foundation that kept me standing even when the addiction was trying to knock me down. The fact that I'm sitting here making this video, the fact that I survived as long as I did, the fact that I had any good days at all, that's because of what you gave me." For the next 20 minutes, Matthew shared stories and memories that Suzanne had forgotten or never known. He talked about moments from his childhood when her support had meant everything to him, times when her belief in his potential had carried him through difficult periods, instances when her unconditional love had provided the only stability in his increasingly chaotic life. "Remember when I was 12 and I wanted to quit acting because some kid at school said I was a show-off? Matthew said, smiling slightly at the memory. You sat me down and told me that the only opinion that mattered was my own, and that if acting made me happy, I should keep doing it regardless of what anyone else thought. That conversation shaped my entire career, Mom. Every time I doubted myself after that, I heard your voice telling me that my happiness was what mattered. But the video wasn't just a collection of fond memories. Matthew also addressed the hardest parts of their relationship, the lies he had told her about his drug use, the times he had manipulated her concern for him, the ways his addiction had hurt her and damaged their trust. I know I lied to you so many times about the pills, Matthew said, his voice breaking slightly. I know you knew I was lying, and I know how much that hurt you. I want you to understand that every lie I told you was me trying to protect you from the worst of what I was going through. I didn't want you to see how bad it really was because I couldn't bear the thought of adding to your pain. Matthew explained that his secrecy about his addiction hadn't been about not trusting her or not wanting her help. It had been about not wanting to drag her into the darkness he was experiencing. He had been trying, in his own confused way, to shield her from the full extent of his suffering. But I realize now that keeping you at a distance didn't protect you, Matthew continued. It just made you feel helpless and shut out. I'm sorry for that, Mom. I'm sorry I thought I could handle this alone, and I'm sorry I didn't let you help me the way you wanted to. The most powerful part of the recording came toward the end, when Matthew talked about what his relationship with his mother had meant to him during his darkest moments. Even when I was at my worst, even when I was lying to you and avoiding your calls and making you worry, I always knew you loved me, Matthew said. That knowledge was like a light in the darkness. No matter how lost I got, no matter how worthless the addiction made me feel, I always had this voice in my head that sounded like you telling me I was worth saving. Matthew paused, wiping away tears that had started flowing during this part of his message. I want you to know that every day I stayed alive, every time I chose recovery over giving up, every moment when I found the strength to keep fighting, that was because of you. Your love was the foundation everything else was built on. Even when I couldn't access it, even when the addiction was blocking everything else out, your love was still there, keeping me alive. As the recording moved into its final minutes, Matthew shifted to talking about his hopes for his mother's future. And this part of the message revealed a depth of insight and maturity that his addiction had often obscured. I need you to promise me something, Matthew said, looking directly into the camera with an intensity that made Suzanne feel as if he were in the room with her. I need you to promise me that you won't let my death define the rest of your life. You have so much to offer the world, so much love to give, so many people who need what you have to offer. Matthew talked about his mother's work with various charities, her relationships with friends and family members, her interests and passions that had often taken a backseat to worrying about his well-being. I want you to live. Really live, Matthew said. I want you to travel to all those places you always talked about visiting. I want you to spend time with people who make you laugh. I want you to pursue the things that bring you joy without feeling guilty about being happy when I'm not here. The recording concluded with Matthew expressing his deep gratitude for having Suzanne as his mother and his regret that his addiction had prevented him from being the son she deserved. You gave me the best life anyone could ask for, Matthew said. You were proud of me when I succeeded, and you loved me when I failed. You celebrated my victories and held me through my defeats. You were exactly the mother I needed, and I hope I was able to give you at least some of the happiness you gave me. As the video ended, Matthew looked directly into the camera one last time and said, I love you, Mom. I've loved you every day of my life, and I'll love you every day of whatever comes after. Thank you for being my safe place in a dangerous world. When the screen went black, Suzanne sat in Matthew's bedroom holding the camera and sobbing, not just with grief, but with a complex mixture of pain and healing that she had never experienced before. The recording had given her something she hadn't realized she desperately needed. Her son's final thoughts, unfiltered by addiction or pretense, expressing truths that had been impossible to communicate during his lifetime. Over the following weeks, Suzanne watched the recording multiple times, each viewing revealing new layers of meaning and helping her process different aspects of her grief. She began to understand that Matthew's addiction had not just been a disease that affected him, it had been a barrier that had prevented both of them from expressing the depth of their love and understanding. The recording helped Suzanne release the guilt she had been carrying about Matthew's addiction and death. His explicit absolution, delivered with such sincerity and clarity, allowed her to begin forgiving herself for the ways she felt she had failed as a mother. But more than that, the video gave Suzanne a roadmap for honoring Matthew's memory in a way that would have made him proud. His encouragement for her to live fully and pursue her own happiness became a directive that guided her through the following months of grief and recovery. Suzanne began traveling, something she had always wanted to do but had postponed due to her concerns about Matthew's well-being. She renewed her involvement with addiction recovery organizations, not just as a way of processing her grief, but as a fulfillment of Matthew's wish that she continue giving her love and support to others who needed it. Most importantly, Suzanne was able to transform her understanding of her relationship with Matthew from one defined by addiction and tragedy to one defined by love and connection. The recording had shown her that despite all the difficulties caused by his disease, the foundation of their relationship had remained strong and meaningful. 6 months after finding the recording, Suzanne made the difficult decision to share excerpts from Matthew's message with addiction counselors and family support groups. She felt that his insights into the relationship between addiction and family dynamics could help other parents and children who were struggling with similar challenges. The video became a powerful tool for helping families understand that addiction doesn't erase love, and that the person struggling with substance abuse is often as desperate to maintain family connections as their loved ones are to help them. Matthew Perry's goodbye video to his mother wasn't just a final message from a son to his parent. It was a profound meditation on love, forgiveness, and the ways that human connection can survive even the most destructive diseases. It transformed Suzanne Morrison's grief into something that honored both Matthew's memory and his desire for her continued happiness. The hidden camera that Suzanne found in her son's closet contained 47 minutes of truth that changed everything she thought she knew about motherhood, addiction, and the enduring power of unconditional love. In his final words to her, Matthew had given his mother not just closure, but permission to live fully in his absence, a gift that would define the rest of her life.